welcome to Stillspeakpod. So Friday night we went back to the Murdaugh story and we did a few updates about Alex. And the biggest update was that the grand jury added 21 more charges against Alex Murdaugh, in addition to the 27 that he was charged with by the grand jury last month, and then the 5 felonies also that he was charged with over 2 arrests. We also discussed how he had not only given Curtis Edward Smith 17 cashier's checks, but he also had written 254 personal checks to Curtis Edward Smith. I don't have the number in front of me right this second, but I believe the total came to $1.8 million. Then we briefly discussed that another boat occupant on the boat the night that Mallory Beach died, the cousin of Connor Cook, his name is Anthony Cook, also filed a civil suit, and we discussed that a little bit in the last one. So there are more updates than that, but it was too much to cover in one video, so we're just gonna pick up where we left off. So a friend of Alex Murdaugh, Chris Wilson, says that Alex swindled him out of $192,000 after they worked on a case together. And he said, quote, "I am deeply troubled, disappointed, and angry. I have known Alex Murdaugh for 30 years, but friendship doesn't replace facts. Alex has to be held accountable for this situation and seemingly others," unquote. And he gets added to a few people who have spoken out against Alex Murdaugh and people who have known him for a long time. It's rather fascinating because not only was Alex, doing things to his clients to get money, but he was also asking for money from his brother, from a coworker, God knows who else. And in addition to that, he was even hitting up his own friends, like this guy who's saying that they worked on a case together and that Alex swindled him out of almost $200,000. This guy really would not stop. He would not stop. He just kept going. And it didn't matter who. Didn't matter if you knew him for 30 years. Didn't matter if you worked alongside of him for 20 years. Didn't matter if it was the son of Gloria Satterfield, who's a vulnerable adult and lost their home. I mean, he really, it's actually sickening, to be honest. I think at some point in all of our lives, whether it's elementary school, middle school, high school, into our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever it is, at some point we always end up having a friend or someone we thought was a friend who maybe did us wrong, right? And it depends on what the person did, but if you've ever felt a betrayal by a friend, it hurts big time. You're just like, wow, I really thought I knew this person, and they did X, Y, Z to me. Like, what the freak? And so these are all obviously adults. Alex Murdaugh is 53. Yeah, 53. And so maybe they don't care, but I doubt it. I'm sure they feel a level of just betrayal, being deceived, manipulated, lied to. And that's just a really overwhelming feeling when you think that you know somebody or you thought that someone was quote unquote a friend. When somebody says, someone was living 2 lives, I think a lot of people immediately think of two lives, like the person had a family and then they had an entire another family, or they had a family and they were carrying on an affair for 5 years. With Alex, he was living two completely different lives, but it wasn't connected, at least not that we know of, to any second family or affair. This was a criminal life and a prominent, powerful, wealthy, well-to-do man, right? Two total different lives. That had to, at some point, become exhausting. Having to constantly think of ways to swindle people, constantly lying and manipulating and hiding and all of that. I have to believe that at some point he was just completely exhausted from doing what he was doing. Or maybe not. Maybe he's just that terrible of a person that he never actually did get exhausted. And maybe now that it's all caught up with him, he's mentally exhausted because he had a crash of sorts where it all came tumbling down on him real fast. And then he was like, oof, you know. Sometimes you hear people talk about living a lie, if you heard it in a documentary or a movie, and they say that once that lie finally came out, or they were able to speak about it or tell the truth about it, there was a sense of relief because now it was out there. And it was like all this stuff was weighing on them, and then it just felt like this massive release. So I wonder, for him, does he feel that way? Does he feel like, you know what, well, now it's all out there, I don't have to lie anymore, I don't have to manipulate anymore, and there's this sense of relief. And I would think that when you're doing these sort of crimes, that you're running on adrenaline, because you have to watch your back, you know, kind of peek around your shoulder, so to speak. Constantly think of ways to blow people off, to buy yourself time, to come up with explanations. And in your mind, you might think, eventually I'm going to have to face this and pay some of these people back. And I mean people like Randy Murdaugh, or the co-worker that he borrowed money from. I mean, he would have needed to find a way to pay them back. And if he couldn't, he would have to have come up with more excuses and ways to buy time and find a different way to get the money, to give it back to them, and etc., etc. Now he doesn't have to worry about that, right? So it's taken care of for him. He's being charged with the crimes. He can't pay any of these people back. If he's convicted of all of these charges, he's facing over 100 years in prison. We know that Alex Murdaugh most likely wouldn't even have lived 100 years, as the average person doesn't. And he's 53. So even if he had a minimum sentence of, let's say, 20 to 25 years for all of them, let's just say a year for each one, that would be, oh no, that would be a lot more. That would actually be a lot. It'd be like 50-something years. Okay, let's just say 25 years. I mean, then he's pushing 78 years old. So, yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. I really don't. I think they have the evidence to back up and support the charges. And clearly a grand jury found him to, you know, be charged with these crimes, and I don't think there'll be any issue with him being convicted of them, at least most of them. Alex was dealing with a lot of money, and usually when somebody's doing a crime of sorts, they will resort to cash because cash doesn't leave a money trail, right? But when you're dealing with $90,000, $120,000, $200,000, $500,000, you don't just walk up to an ATM and pull out $500,000 cash, right? And so he was doing cashier's checks and personal checks, which made it to a money trail. So this isn't like, did he kill his wife and son or not in a trial and having to prove or not prove it, but there's an actual trail, and it all leads back to him. He really didn't have a choice because of the amount of money he was dealing with. A couple of $1,000s, okay, you can, move around money easily cash-wise with that type of money. But moving around these huge amounts that he was, no. There's a trail, and it's massive. And that account that he made was seriously probably the dumbest move he made. Speaking of that account, one of the updates is that the lawyers of Gloria Satterfield's sons filed a lawsuit against Bank of America, alleging the bank allowed Murdaugh to set up and use a bank account to launder millions in stolen money. According to the suit, Bank of America should have identified these and other transactions the lawyers described as suspicious and claimed that the company made significant fees from Murdaugh's accounts. And Bank of America released a statement on the suit on Monday of last week, and they said, quote, "There is no basis for this lawsuit, and we are asking the court to dismiss it. Make no mistake, the wrongdoer here was Mr. Murdaugh, and the diversion of these funds occurred away from Bank of America. We had no knowledge of any theft and followed standard procedures in account openings for a sole proprietor business. Additionally, contrary to what the lawsuit claims, South Carolina law allows sole proprietors businesses to open bank accounts with a social security number," unquote. This lawsuit's really interesting to me, and this is where I actually tell you a personal story and experience of mine. I don't bank with Bank of America. I think I did many, many years ago, but not currently. And we're an average family. We're a family of 5. My husband works. I just started working part-time for my family business. And so, we don't make a lot of money, okay? We make an average household amount. And, when tax season rolls around, we have 3 kids, we end up at the end of the year receiving a good amount of money that we make plans for all year long, waiting for it. Every year for the last 3, maybe 4 years, I'm not kidding, every single freaking year, I do the taxes with TurboTax. It goes into our bank account, right? And then as soon as it's in the account, because I've been waiting all year for that money and have been making plans for that money, what I do is, I pick, okay, we need a dryer, we need to put up a fence, and I do all these budgets of what we're going to do as soon as the money is deposited. And then we start swiping our card, right? A lot, because we have this list of things that we need to do. And every freaking year, by the second or third transaction, they block my credit card and put a hold on my account, saying that it's suspicious activity. And every year I have to call them, sit on the phone, explain to them that it's our tax money, and yeah, we don't usually spend $500 on a dryer, but we're using our tax money to get a dryer, or whatever it is. I have to explain to them why I am using my own tax money. And I said to them one year, I was like, this is the time of year where everybody's getting their tax money. Like, you should just make note of that. I'm all about being careful. You're looking out for me. I get it, but it becomes such a pain in the ass that I have to call every single year. Can't you make a little note in the system? And the last 2 years, when I talked to them, they were like, okay, well, if you're going to be using the card a lot and making all these transactions, they're going to keep blocking it every time you do a transaction. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? And they were like, so send us, or tell us what you plan to spend and where. And I had to give them estimates. So like Home Depot, $700. These are just random numbers. A fence guy, $1,500. This, that, Amazon, whatever, right? And I had to tell them. And then what they did was they went into the account and they wrote all these different transactions down so that the system would not block my card. So why am I sharing that? It's interesting to me that the lawsuit says that Bank of America should have identified that some of these transactions were really suspicious. And I think to my own experience, and I wasn't moving thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. We don't get double-digit taxes back, right? It's just a couple of $1,000. Because it was out of our normal spending, they were alerted, right? So he was clearly using this Forge account for the money he was taking from people, and then he was removing the money and putting it someplace else. I don't know what the hell he was doing. We still don't know. But it wasn't like his personal checking account. But some of these transactions were significant. They were significantly high, okay? And I kind of have to agree. Why is it that me, the average Joe, who doesn't make, 6-digit, income, and gets a couple of $1,000s back for taxes, and you're blocking my card because I want to buy a dryer, but this dude's moving $500,000, $200,000, and doing it frequently. It's not like he was spreading it out. He was doing this frequently. And nothing in your system alerted you to be like, what's going on with this account? And it also seemed, and I would love to see the financial breakdown, but it seems to me that he was taking money out via cashier's checks and personal checks, etc., more than he was actually putting in at some points. And I know they deal with a lot of businesses and small businesses and big ones and people, and I get it. But again, I go to my experience and I'm like, all right, well, I get shit on and I'm an average freaking person, but Alex Murdaugh was moving freaking all this money and nothing alerted them that it was suspicious. My bank card, when I try to use it on Walmart app to do my groceries, like if I'm doing grocery pickup, every single time it blocks my card. So I'll, try to do it, send it, boom, blocked. And I'll call and they'll say, oh, well, you don't usually buy groceries from Walmart. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I do every 2 weeks. And every 2 weeks, I have to call to make you take the block off. Are you kidding me? And yes, I'm looking into a new bank because I appreciate them being cautious at the same time. When you roll up to a gas station with 3 kids and you go to get gas and your card is denied, and then you have to now sit on the phone while you're at the gas station to call the bank to say, hey, what the hell's up with my card? Oh, you tried to buy groceries at Walmart and we blocked it, is a pain in the ass. Because I'm sitting in this car with 3 kids who are like, why the hell are we sitting at this freaking gas station? I wouldn't say that Bank of America aided in Alex Murdaugh laundering millions in stolen money. I would say that their system there is definitely not as cautious as my bank seems to be. I wouldn't say, oh, Bank of America, you knew he was using stolen money and you were helping him launder millions of dollars because you were making significant amounts of fees from his account. That's me personally. I would say, hey, Bank of America, you probably need a different system because you probably do deal with millions of clients and businesses, etc. And clearly something went wrong here. But I wouldn't say that they willingly aided him. I don't know that I agree with that. But it's not up for me to decide, right? That will be handled in court. I mean, Bank of America is a business, right? And if they can get money out of you, they're going to take the opportunity. I mean, look at overdraft fees, for God's sake. It's insane. But I honestly don't think that they really helped him to launder money. But I get it. We're in a slap-happy lawsuit kind of mood in this story. One of the lawyers for Gloria Satterfield's sons, his name is Bland. I believe his first name is Eric. He's a badass. He is. He's very blunt and forward and smart, and he's really working hard for the Satterfield sons, including this lawsuit against Bank of America. And they have made out with a significant amount more money than they originally were even going to get. And Alex's lawyers, who are very questionable, but hey, they're defense lawyers, right? So there's that. They asked a judge to actually silence the lawyer Bland with a gag order, alleging that he repeated media interviews disparaging Murdaugh are souring his chances of getting a fair trial. And then Bland fired back that it would be better if his own lawyers had a gag order because they had admitted some of Alex's wrongdoings in TV interviews, which I'm laughing because that's hilarious. Which, while we're on Alex's lawyers, I go back to the question, who's paying for these lawyers? Does Alex have money still? And if he does still have money, then are they being paid with money that was stolen? Are they doing this for free? I really, for some reason, doubt that. But to defend Alex Murdaugh, well, I give you props, bro. I give you props. You got your work cut out for you. And I'm sure you want to get paid for it. The lawsuits don't stop there. The family of Mallory Beach has filed a lawsuit as well, and another one, in addition to the one they originally had, claiming pictures of their daughter's body is being used in a documentary centering on Alex Murdaugh and his family. And the lawsuit alleges that Parker, which is from Parker's Convenience Store, and his lawyers obtained and provided pictures of Mallory Beach's body for a documentary titled The Murdaugh Murders. The lawyers for the Beach family say the defendants also publicly released a video trailer for the documentary, which included confidential mediation videos belonging to the Beach family, in relation to their wrongful death suit. They also claim that Parker, along with his attorneys, hired social media, quote, knife fighters, unquote, and others to affect the proceedings of the wrongful death suit. I would love to know what evidence they have of this, because I don't believe the documentary is out yet. I could be corrected there if I'm wrong. And so, did they get a viewing of it prior to its release? I mean, how do they know that pictures of her body are in it? And if it is, that's really messed up, then what's the proof that it was Parker who actually gave it to this documentary? It doesn't say. Maybe somebody's looking into that. I'd be really curious what their proof is, because that's a pretty big allegation. And I would think that if you're going to make that allegation, you most likely have the proof. I would just be curious what that proof actually is. The suit says that Vicky Ward then attempted to get the Beach family and her lawyers to appear in the documentary by acknowledging that Parker and his law firm had an agenda and that she had nothing to do with them other than having their stuff. So it sounds like what they're saying is that Vicky Ward, who's doing this documentary, basically threw Parker and his law firm under the bus and said, well, I don't really have anything to do with them. I just have their stuff. And this was sort of an admittance that it was them who gave her whatever it is that they're claiming was given to her, like the mediation video and photos of Mallory's body. I don't know if that's the only thing as far as evidence they have, is the allegation that Vicky Ward basically alluded to it. But again, I'd like to see. Of course, Parker's convenience denied any allegation of providing these crime scene photos and video footage or other confidential mediation information to Vicky Ward. And in a statement it says, quote, Parker's is disappointed that anyone would leak or discuss information contained in these items with the media. In fact, when Parker's filed a motion in November of 2020 regarding mediation material, Parker's was careful not to disclose anything that can be considered confidential. We continue to send our condolences to the Beach family for their loss, and will be filing a timely response to the plaintiff's false and baseless allegations, unquote. Here's my standpoint. They lost their daughter in a terrible way, right? And it was horrific for them. I can't even fathom what they're going through. And, when we lose somebody in a way like that, or if it's like a car accident of some sort, you want somebody to pay. You want somebody to be held responsible and possibly use that money for a series of different things, because usually at the end you'll get some type of settlement of sorts, whether that's for therapy, funeral fees, whatever. Let's say you had to be out of work for 2 years because you mentally couldn't even work, and you're trying to make up that, loss of income. And I know in their minds, it's not that the money is going to make it all better. At least I don't believe that's the case. I mean, it doesn't bring her back, and money doesn't replace her. But I think it's just the overall of you want somebody held responsible, period. Doesn't matter who, somebody. And Paul Murdaugh is dead. He was murdered. Their daughter was killed in an accident, but Paul was actually murdered. So he can't be held responsible anymore. That went out the window. And they already had the original civil suit, which made sense because Most people do that. They do. Most people will do some type of suit like that if it was some type of accidental death. And yeah, if anybody released their dead daughter's pictures to be in a documentary without their consent, that is beyond wrong, and I don't blame them one freaking bit to file a lawsuit. That being said, I just hope that the wrong people are being accused of these things. And I don't know Parker's convenience store owner. I don't know anything about him. I don't know what type of person he is or what his business dealings were. I don't know if he's being truthful or not truthful. But here's how I see it. This convenience store has been under heavy scrutiny because they had the lawsuit originally by Mallory Beach's family. Now they have this one and Anthony Cook. And I think Connor Cook's lawsuit is against Parker's too. I have to double check that. I want to be exact. I don't even know if the store is even still open after all this. I honestly don't. Let me look. Oh, okay. Well, it looks like it's actually a chain of sorts. I'm not familiar with it because I don't live in South Carolina. Where I live, we don't have it. So it does appear like they are still open. It looks like a nice little place. I don't know. Where I was going with that was basically like if this was a privately owned type of place. From what I'm seeing, it doesn't appear to be the case, but I could be wrong because I don't live in South Carolina. I was going to say, like, his business is on the line. Why would he, take further risk to then give out, Mallory's pictures and the mediation video and risk it even further? However, if he was offered a significant amount of money for the mediation video and the pictures, well, then you have motive to do that. Especially if he believes that he's about to lose a significant amount of money, he needs some way to make that money up. This place kind of reminds me of a smaller version of racetrack gas stations that we have near me, where they have like a store and gas, etc. It's or maybe like a 7-Eleven-ish. According to the website, they have a whole bunch in Georgia, and then in Hardyville, South Carolina. Oh my goodness, Georgia. Yeah, so this looks like a Georgia, South Carolina type of place. So yeah, they're still in business. So that's that. I never actually thought to even look it up, to be honest with you, this whole time. I just was thinking it was a convenience store. I didn't think that it was necessary to look it up, but now I know. Okay, so there's 8 civil suits against Alex. There's the 48 grand jury charges that are all felonies. Then he's got the 5 felonies, and that happened over his 2 arrests. Like I said earlier, if he's convicted of all of these, he's facing well over 100 years in prison. He's 53 years old, so you can do the math on that. He does have a bond hearing tomorrow that was rescheduled from Friday, and it was canceled Thursday night due to the grand jury coming back with 21 additional charges. And then you have the 5 SLED investigations. You can make it 6 if you count Paul and Maggie separately, but if you count them as one, then it's 5 because you have Gloria Satterfield's death, Stephen Smith's death, Paul and Maggie's death, and then Alex's scheme on the side of the road. Today I was thinking about Alex randomly while I was doing a whole bunch of different house things, getting ready for Christmas and figuring out where to hide my presents because my kids have access to every part of my house. The struggle is real. I do not know where to put it. But anyways, as I was doing these things, I was thinking about Alex. And this thought came in my mind. Where did Alex learn this? Who taught Alex this? I don't know. I just don't have this vibe from him, and I don't know him, but I don't get this vibe from him that he came up with this on his own. That he just, one day, 6 years ago when he was 47 years old, he just decided, you know what I'm going to start doing? I'm going to start scamming people and laundering money. And how I'm going to do that is, I'm going to open up a bank account. And then I'm going to tell them this. But then I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to take that money and I'm going to put it. I just don't see that. And the thing is that he wasn't using the same exact thing each time. What do I mean by that? It seems like all these different situations and clients that he was scamming from, he used something different each time. With the Satterfields, he just didn't let them know that the settlement had occurred. With another client, he said that he was going to be using a portion of the money to do a reconstruction video of his accident, but instead he took the money. Another time, he said that he had to take a portion of the money for medical bills for the person, and he didn't. He took the money. When he borrowed money from Randy Murdaugh and his co-worker, he gave them different excuses. With every person he did this to, he had to be creative and come up with how he was going to get money out of the situation. Just no pattern. There was no him doing the exact same thing to each person. It was all varying different reasons. And let's face it, you also, when you're doing these sorts of things, I would think that you would need to have some level of being able to judge your victim and whether or not they will fall for what you're saying. And if they're vulnerable or not cautious, or to him seem dumb almost. It's kind of like when people who rob homes case the joint first. They want to see the patterns of the family, their comings and goings, and which doors lock and which doors have alarms on them, etc. They're doing that before they commit the crime. I would think that when you're doing this level of theft from clients, that you're constantly scoping out your client and judging whether or not they're going to be easily manipulated and fall for it. And it's really interesting because it seems like he did have a level of good judgment on who to do it to and who not to do it to, because he was doing it to all these different people for 6 years, and yet we're just now hearing about it, or they're just now figuring out, wait a minute, he said this to me and we got this X amount of money, let me get a lawyer and look into this. Or go to the prosecutor or the police and say, I think Alex also swindled me out of money, and tell your story. And all it would have taken within the first year is one of those people to come forth, and that would have possibly stopped Alex's criminal path into doing it to more people. And I'm not calling the people that he manipulated and lied to and robbed from idiots. I'm saying from Alex's standpoint, I feel as though he most likely was picking and choosing who he thinks wouldn't have a clue what he had just done. I mean, what's the odds that all these people over these years, that none of them made the connection until now? Did he just get really lucky? Or did he really know his clients because he scoped them out and figured out who would be easy to do it to and who wouldn't be? Which brings me back to, who the hell taught him to do this? Did he seriously teach himself? Did he get it from a TV show, a freaking movie? Where did this start? Where did it begin? I really think that this story is much deeper than we can ever imagine, personally. I do. And when you follow somebody's past and you go way back when it comes to criminals, you can usually find along the way somewhere in their life where things went wrong or where they learned certain behavior. For example, and this is a very triggering topic, so that's your heads up, okay? But sometimes, actually a lot of the times, when somebody sexually assaults a child, which is the worst of the worst of the worst in my opinion, if you go back into their childhood, they too were sexually assaulted. Becoming a killer, you don't really need to learn, right? Pull a trigger, use a knife, slit a throat, strangle somebody. It's not something you have to learn. But laundering money? No, that's something that, like, you either learned it, saw it somewhere, heard it somewhere, had somebody helping you figure out how to do it who does have a criminal mind. Cough, cough, Curtis Edward Smith maybe. Or you came up with this small little idea and it worked. And then you wanted more. And you continued. And as you continued, you got better at it and more creative, right? And then you became greedy. You couldn't stop. You wanted more because you kept getting away with it. That's also possible, and you can apply that to all different things in life. You have one drink, and then you want 2 drinks. Next thing you know, you're on the floor of the bar. Or you're an ex-addict, and you go out one night, and you do drugs with your friends. And the next thing you know, you're on the street for a week getting high because you couldn't stop. You couldn't control it. You wanted more. I just have this gut feeling this is much deeper. And I think there's some possible family secrets here. Or he really was just the black sheep of the family. And he came up with it completely on his own. And it started off small. And he didn't know when to stop. And he found himself in this situation. Who the hell knows? Then I was thinking about Paul Murdaugh. And there was so much discussion about people thinking that Paul was going to get away with the boating accident and killing Mallory Beach. It was even said from the occupants on the boat. They were like, oh, he's not going to get in trouble. He's going to get away with it. That wasn't the exact words, but it was very close. And the great irony here is Paul's father, Alex, is far more powerful and prominent than Paul Murdaugh. He's just the son of Alex Murdaugh, right? He was just the son. He was a young kid. And I say kid because he's a kid to me. And yet, Alex isn't getting away with it. Nobody seems to be pulling strings for Alex or hiding his crimes or in some big conspiracy to get him off or to cover it up or deflect it to somebody else or anything of that nature. So it's kind of ironic that people looked to this family and feared them and thought that, Paul was just, part of this prominent family and he was never going to get in trouble and his big, powerful family was going to save him. Yet with Alex Murdaugh, he was thrown under the bus real damn fast. By the people he worked with, by his own family, by his friends of 30 plus years, his clients, etc. So who knows? Maybe if Paul Murdaugh would have went to an actual trial and didn't end up losing his life, maybe justice would have been served if he was at fault for the death of Mallory Beach, which is up for debate, of course, and that's why a trial would have been helpful in deciding that, because we would have seen all of the evidence. That being said, unless Paul hadn't been murdered, most of us wouldn't even know about the boating accident. Hampton County people knew, people in South Carolina knew, but it wasn't until Paul and Maggie were killed that it was brought into the national spotlight. So actually, we would have never seen the evidence in a trial because we wouldn't even know about it. But hey, maybe he really would have been held accountable. Who knows? We'll never know. Alex, on the other hand, he's going to be held accountable. I have no doubt about that. Which leads me to the double murder of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh. The whole reason that most of us even know about the story. In a way, if it wasn't Alex who killed Paul and Maggie, and it truly was some other person that we don't know about yet, in a way, that person not only took the lives of Paul and Maggie, but they also destroyed the life of Alex Murdaugh, right? Because without the double murder, and then him later wanting to do this insurance scheme on the side of the road, a lot of this would have never came to light. So, and in addition to that, they also destroyed the life of Buster Murdaugh. Mother and brother brutally murdered in cold blood. Father fakes a shooting, arrested twice, he's in jail, allegedly swindled millions of dollars from past clients and friends of the family to Buster, people he knew. His father, got his law license suspended. He was personally fired from his job. The homes are now being, claimed for damages, and they put people in charge of all of their money to the point where Alex's lawyers are claiming that Buster can't even buy food. From my understanding, he is staying with an aunt and uncle, so I'm sure that helps. But this dude is in his mid-20s, and look at what his life has become. A year ago today, he was living a pretty cushy, nice life. He had his mother, his brother, his father, beautiful homes, hunting lodge, boat, trips galore, okay? And what does he have now? What does he have now? That's it. Most likely, Alex is going to go to jail. And his brother and his mother are gone. He's the sole person in that 4-people family. And can't go anywhere without being recognized, have to hide out, and there are some people that give Buster a hard time because they say that he gave Paul his ID the night of the boating accident. I don't know if that's actually a fact. It could have been that Paul took it. Maybe it was an old ID. We don't know for sure that Buster gave it to him. And when he was recently in, I believe, Las Vegas at a convention, him and his uncle went and played some of the games in Las Vegas. They were gambling a little bit. And he got a lot of grief for that as well. And it's like, dude, this kid, again, I'm calling him kid because he's much younger than I am, has been through a lot. And you want to give him grief because he sat at a casino with his uncle? I mean, you don't even know if he was gambling or not. He could have just been sitting there with his uncle for all we know. I don't think it's fair to judge Buster at this time until there's actual proof or any type of fact that he either was involved or knew or anything of the sort. Until then, put yourself in this kid's shoes. And somebody commented on the channel, and I loved her comment. It was funny, and it was talking about him like moving to Alaska. And I said, if it was me, I would be like moving up to like, you know, the mountains and becoming like a ski instructor, or go and be like a waiter on a beach on some tropical island, wear this big, you know, floppy hat to cover my damn face. Which then they said that would only cover your hair. You really need like a mustache and whatnot. But seriously, again, his mother and brother brutally murdered in cold blood. But back to what I was saying, and that was that if it was somebody else who killed Paul and Maggie Murdaugh, then that person had a hand in also destroying Alex's life beyond just killing his wife and son, and in addition, also destroyed Buster's life beyond just killing his mother and brother. Now, if it was Alex who was involved in the death of Paul and Maggie, well, Alex was his very own demise. Paul and Maggie's murder is definitely a backstory now. When the story first began, it was the main story, and then there was all these little other stories, like, oh, their housekeeper died, oh, there was this boating accident, oh, Stephen Smith may have been killed by the Murdaughs. And Paul and Maggie's death was the main focus. Now, you never really hear about it. When you go through any of these articles about Alex, very rarely do you see a mention of Paul and Maggie. And usually when they mention it, it's to say Alex Murdaugh was the husband and father of Paul and Maggie who were murdered. It's like a one-sentence thing. And that's sad, because no matter what you think of Paul Murdaugh or even Maggie Murdaugh, you know, I'm sure they had people in their lives that loved them and cared for them who want answers. And Alex has taken the spotlight off of their deaths. For Pete's sake, it just passed 6 months. It's only been 6 months, and already you don't really hear about it. And hell, I'm probably even a little guilty of just mostly speaking of Alex because it's hard not to, so I'm not even blaming the media. I'm just saying that all of this criminal activity and civil suits and investigations and arrests, etc., just have overtaken all of the discussion. And it's not just 8 civil suits against Alex. It's not just 48 grand jury charges. It's not just the 5 felonies over his 2 arrests. It's not just the 5 SLED investigations that have been opened. Which, by the way, I actually think it's 6. It could be 7. I think I said that wrong earlier. Because it's Gloria, and then Stephen, and then the double murder, Alex's shooting, and I believe, 5. And then the money that Alex took. No, it's 5. I didn't say it wrong. But anyway, it's not all just that. In addition to that, the Office of Disciplinary Counsel, the ODC, has its hands full as well. they have fielded 4 complaints against attorneys involved in this huge web. And so that's a whole other agency or department, whatever word you want to use, that's also mixed up in this massive story. And all of that goes back to one person, Alex Murdaugh. And last but not least, the last thing I wanted to say here was, I always say to my husband, what's the end game? Like if we're discussing something, okay, we're going to try to do this. Okay, we're going to do this. But what's the end game? Did Alex Murdaugh have an end game? Or was he going to do this into the very, very end and take it as far and as long as he possibly could? Did this guy who managed to rob from all these different people in all these different excuses like we've discussed earlier, was he smart enough to do that, but dumb enough to not consider that eventually he was going to get caught? Or did he have an end game? Was there one? Surely, I have to believe that he knew eventually things would catch up with him and he would be caught. I just cannot believe that he would be dumb enough to not think that at some point and think of how he would handle it when the time came. What he would do and what would happen to him, what would happen with Buster, etc. And speaking of all these different creative excuses and things that he did to people, in addition to that, he also had this alleged, shooting on the side of the road to even do an insurance fraud. And if that was the real reason, if he really wanted to die that day, and he really expected to die and get his son this insurance money, which I said in other videos, I don't personally believe. I think it was all fake. I don't think he wanted to die that day. And I think that it was just a way to buy himself time and to change the headline at that time. But anyways, let's say it's true though, that he really thought he was going to die that day. This fool was literally going to go to his grave in one last massive plot to swindle $10 freaking million he would have never even seen. Because he would have been dead. So, the question is, did he have an end game, or was he going to go to the very, very last moment? We don't know. Anyway, we're running long now, and I have gifts to wrap. And I still haven't figured out a hiding spot, guys, so wish me luck. I don't know. I'm thinking the attic. I know it's a real pain in the butt, though, because, you gotta go up there, you gotta get the ladder, but my kids go everywhere in my home. And they still believe in you-know-who. And I'm saying it like that in case you have kids around right now. When I was a kid, we lived in a townhome up north, and in the winter, around Christmas, it was absolutely freaking freezing outside, so we didn't really go outside unless it was, snowing, and then we'd go outside. So my parents would keep it in a shed on our patio that I later learned that's where it was. And it was a great, great spot because we didn't go out there. It was freaking freezing. But I don't have anything like that. I really need a shed. That's what I need. But God forbid I try to buy one with taxes. My bank's gonna freaking put a hold on my damn account. And when you have 3 kids, and that's a lot of presents because it's times 3. So there's not a whole lot of places. Like if you have 1 kid, you can easily hide, right? Under a bed, in a closet. I don't know. I'll figure it out. But that's what I have to go do. Because now they're sleeping and I have to go take care of that. So that's it. And actually, we're going to have a part 3. Excuse me, I have the hiccups. Maybe tomorrow night, maybe Tuesday night. I won't make you wait long. This actually came out 2 weeks ago, and I've been wanting to discuss it, but I don't want to go any longer than I am right now. And that is the 911 call the day that Gloria Satterfield actually fell. And you hear Maggie and Paul Murdaugh on this 911 call. Some of you may have heard it already. If you haven't, go take a listen to it. You can find it on YouTube easily. We're going to play it and discuss it because there's some things I want to point out. But you can listen to it now in preparation for that. And it's a little eerie, right? Because about 2 years and 4 months later, the 2 people on this phone call are murdered. And what's stuck out to me was that there was a lot of people who were going around saying that Gloria did not fall at the Moselle property, the hunting lodge, the 1,700 acre where Paul and Maggie were murdered. They were saying that it was at their other home, their main home. And in this 911 call, she gave the address for Moselle Road. And that really stood out to me because her fall was at that property. Paul and Maggie were killed at that property. So we're going to chat about it because it's rather interesting. And of course, this is from Maggie and Paul's standpoint. But I think that there will be some things in it that will give us a more better, maybe, understanding of what happened. Because there's been a lot of different versions of the death of Gloria Satterfield, and we'll discuss that too. So until next time, I'm out. Wish me luck, and I'll see you soon.